Welcome to Pranzo with Pasquale. I'm your host, Pasquale Diana. Pranzo in Italy is your lunchtime meal, the most important meal for Italians. It's the meal I grew up eating. And at that table is where you talk about your day, where you talk about life. You eat, you break bread. It's a very important part of the lifestyle. That's what we're aiming for on this show, to really give you moments of truth, of depth, the story, the human story behind people in hospitality, people that have devoted their lives into pouring into others. I've spent my whole life in hospitality since I was a little kid, and on this show you will see chefs, you'll see restaurateurs, but you'll also see artists, creatives, people that have served other people throughout their own lifetime. What we're really searching for is authentic stories, real people with real stories. So if that's you or someone you know, please reach out to us, DM us or email us, and we'd love to be a part in telling your story.
Welcome to Pranzo, everyone. I'm here with a special guest today, the one, the only, the icon, Mr. John Arena. John, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your time.
Oh, thanks for the invitation, Pasquale. I appreciate it.
Do you still have your lab, which used to be your commissary? Is that something that's still functioning?
Oh, yeah. Yep, okay. Absolutely. I get in there, every chance I get.
That's amazing. Just
we have to keep researching. We have to keep growing. No, I'm not a fan of this idea that people say I never change anything. What you mean? You were so perfect 50 years ago that there was no room for improvement? I'm not buying that.
Yeah.
Time marches on. Today's pizza makers, in my opinion, are way more knowledgeable than they were 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago. This is the golden age for pizza, in my opinion.
Wow, I love that you said that. Because you're right. I mean, I don't think anyone could argue that. We didn't have the information we have today or the exposure we had today 20 years ago, 30 years ago, right?
You didn't have the information, and you also didn't have the willingness to share the information. And that's been the real big change. I grew up in an era in New York where you could have a rival pizzeria across the street for 50 years and you never waved hello to the guy, pretended they didn't exist. And that's not really common anymore. In most places, there's much more exchange of ideas, exchange of information, willingness to help each other. It's all been good.
New York. Tell me about New York. Growing up in New York, I know you had your father was involved in the business.
My father, my uncles, my mom, my aunts.
Wow.
We had family pizzerias. So I grew up in that environment. I started working in my family pizzeria basically when I was 6 years old. They let me scoop Italian ices and sweep the floor as best I could. And I actually started making pizzas in 1967 when I was 13.
You remember
That's the only job I've ever had.
Tell me, how many years ago is this now? How old are you now, John?
I'm 71.
58 years ago. How and what part of New York was the restaurant at?
It was on Long Island. We had pizzerias on Long Island and one in New Jersey.
What are your memories growing up in Long Island?
My main memory is that pizza was part of the community. It was a ritual. Every Friday, everybody went out for pizza. You saw your friends, you saw your neighbors. I lived in town where my family pizzeria was, so everybody knew my dad, everybody knew my mom, everybody knew my uncles, my cousins. It was very tight knit and kind of insulated. Also, it was unheard of to visit a pizzeria in another town or another state. The only experience you had with pizza outside of your own pizzeria was if you went on a vacation, you went someplace and complained about how bad the pizza was.
And you worked with your father then a lot, correct?
Yes, it was great. And my dad is 97 years old and I still work with him.
Oh, God bless.
I've worked with my dad every day of my life, every day of my working life. So how lucky am I?
That's beautiful, John. Yeah, and I say that, a lot of us that came up in the business worked with our fathers who were the first generation or, second generation, even from the old country, and they weren't easy men to work with. How was your father as your first true mentor?
I think my dad is atypical in that my dad always said, keep trying to make it better. He never said, this is the way we do it, and that's it. He said, keep learning, keep expanding your vision, and never be satisfied. And that's kind of what has propelled me to continue, kept me interested. No matter how good it is, it can always be better. There's always something new to learn.
Tell me a little bit about your father. So was he like you? Was he in the pizza his whole life, or did he do something else? Was he born in New York?
His first job in New York he was born in New York in 1928. His first job was in a bakery, in the same building that he grew up in. On the ground floor, there was a bakery, which is still there. It's called Parisi's. on Mott Street.
And that was his first exposure to.
That was his introduction to making dough, baking bread. And from there, it's a pretty easy transition, as we're seeing now again in the modern era. A lot of pizza makers are becoming bread bakers, and a lot of bread bakers are becoming pizza makers.
Mm-hmm.
And that has really helped pizza to expand also, because a lot of bread baking techniques are more sophisticated than what was common for pizza makers at that time. Basically, pizza makers in New York back in the old days, they did direct method. They didn't weigh anything. They didn't measure anything. Everything was by instinct. You threw everything in the bowl. You turned it on. You went outside and smoked a cigarette. Came back.
Yes.
Waited for something good to happen, hopefully. Wasn't a lot of science. But my dad has always emphasized being precise. That was really helpful to me.
What did you study in college?
On filmmaking.
Really?
Yep.
I didn't know. Okay. I didn't know this.
I studied filmmaking and realized that there were a lot of people more talented than I was that weren't getting jobs, and said, this pizza stuff is looking pretty good.
So you pivoted to pizza making. So tell me about.
I really realized the role that a pizzeria played in a neighborhood and in a community, and that became intriguing to me. So by the time I was getting ready to graduate from college, I knew that I wanted to continue to be a pizza maker.
Have you ever? Is there any like shorts out there that you have that preserve back then?
I don't think there's anything out there. I don't think there's anything out there anymore. I worked on some documentary films, doing camera work, editing when I was in college. But pizza became my my vehicle of self-expression. There was something about pizza, and the detail that it takes to be good at it that just was always intriguing. And also, you make a film and the film goes out and people watch it, but you're not with them. You make a pizza and you hand it to them, and pizza is womb to tomb. I have customers that have been with me now their whole lives. Many of them. I have customers that are fourth generation customers now.
So then tell us about Vegas. How did you end up in Vegas from New York?
Well, in New York, there was an Italian language newspaper called the Il Progresso. And my cousin and I had gone to Las Vegas for a vacation, and we came back and we had never been out west, and we were raving about how amazing the West Coast was and how great Las Vegas was. And one of my uncles found an ad in the Italian language newspaper for a pizzeria that was for sale in Las Vegas. And he cut it out. And the next time we talked, he was tired of hearing us talk about how great it was out here. And the next time we talked about Las Vegas, he pulled this rumpled piece of paper out of his pocket, threw it down on the table, and said, "Are you going to talk about it or are you going to do it?" And we called the guy, and he was a New York pizza maker that had moved to Las Vegas and hated it. And he was willing to hold the note. So we scraped up enough money for a down payment, gave him the money. He gave us the key, gave us his address, and said, "Send me my money. Goodbye and good luck."
Yeah, he was done with making pizzas, and he was done with Vegas, it sounds like.
Right. So we moved back to New York, and we stayed on and grew the business.
How old were you, John?
I was 25.
Okay. And where would you say you were in terms of your pizza making career before you actually owned your place in Las Vegas? Were you already advanced?
I was, I had grown up. Advanced. I don't know how advanced I was. I think, I was a basic New York pizza maker. I was doing what everybody else did. But I can tell you a funny story.
Please.
When we went to look at the shop, the guy had taken the knobs off the Baker's Pride oven so we couldn't tell what temperature he was cooking at. He had thrown a tarp over all the flour bags, and he had peeled off the labels of all the cans. And he said, "After you give me my money, and we sign a contract, I'll tell you what I'm doing." So we signed the contract, and I said, "How about if we tell you what you're doing? Your ovens are at 550. You're using all Trump's flour. You're using grande mozzarella. Your tomatoes are," at that time he was using Bonta and 6-in-1. And he looked at us like we were like espionage agents. Like, "How did you know my secrets?" He said, "How did you know? Who told you?" And I said, "We know because you're doing the same exact thing that every other New York pizza guy does."
And so that was what you guys did then, right? New York style pizza. Now, what was the name? What was the name of your first pizza place?
First place was called the Original New York Pizza.
Okay.
which is not a very original name, and we found quickly was completely unprotectable. And also what happened was the first day, the first customers that came in the store, one of them was from Philadelphia, one of them was from Detroit, and they all had their own idea of what a pizza was supposed to be. And we realized on day one that there's no way to argue with a customer about and win an argument about who makes the best pizza and which pizza is correct or which pizza is authentic or any of that other nonsense. And we just realized that there was, we were Brooklyn-born pizza makers. So for us, the sun rose and set on New York, and we realized that, hey, there's people, especially there's a lot of people from Chicago in Las Vegas as well. So we realized that everybody had their own attachment to pizza. Everybody had, everybody had unshakable faith that the pizzeria that they grew up around the corner from was the best pizza in the world. And why have that argument? Why not just embrace all of it? And my cousin, who's my partner, said, why don't we just go out and try to learn as much as we can about the other styles and call the place Metro Pizza because it's a reference to all metropolitan areas that have great pizza culture.
And that's how Metro was born. What's your cousin's name?
Sam.
Sam? Is it same last name?
Sam Facchini. No, Sam Facchini.
Facchini.
And we grew up working in the pizzeria together.
So we got these two 25-year-olds from New York who head to Las Vegas, open up a New York pizza place. What was that like? Your first experience owning a place and being responsible and having that pressure?
We were busy immediately. And luckily, neither of us are gamblers. We didn't lead any kind of crazy, wild lives. We saw a lot of people come out here and getting swallowed up. Mm-hmm. And our gamble was to be in the restaurant business.
So this is like, okay, so this is now you're 25. When did, and again, you both, and it's nice that you and your cousin came up together, growing up in a pizzeria, and now you had your own venture in a different part of the country. You decide like, we gotta not only just do New York, let's call it Metro and let's do something different and learn different styles. How do you do that back then? Because there's no internet, there's no pizza schools, I'm assuming back then.
We hit the road. We'd hear about a place that was doing something special and we'd go. When California Pizza Kitchen first opened in Beverly Hills, we were there like the second week they were open because we had heard that they were doing pizza pizza that was inspired by different flavors and different profiles, very experimental. And we said, let's go and learn something. Most of the time, the pizza makers were not that willing to talk to us, but you can learn a lot by just paying attention. As long as you go to a restaurant with the right spirit, if you go with the idea that you go in there to find out how much better you are than the other guy, you don't learn anything. Mm-hmm. But if you go to another restaurant or any other kind of business, and you have an open mind and say, "What can I learn from this? What are they?" Every place that is successful has something that they're doing right. Unless you ask my relatives from New York. Yeah. My dad always said, go someplace and catch them doing something right. Bring that back. Don't come back with the idea that you're better than them. That's not what you're going there for. You're going there to find the one thing that makes a place special and then see how you can apply that to what you want to do.
And so when did you start actually making different types of pizzas?
1986.
Yeah. What was it? So you went from New York. What are the other ones that you started rolling out then?
Well, the first thing we did, a book came out in 1983 or 84 by Evelyn Sloman. It was called The Pizza Book. And it had some stuff from New Haven. It had recipes from Boston, some stuff from the West Coast, from Chicago, of course. And that became like the early precursor to the Pizza Bible.
Okay.
And if you look at that book now, it was revolutionary in its day. If you look at it now, it probably seems dated. But just the idea that there were pizza makers all over the country that were doing something special opened our eyes.
But like you said, it's now today, 2026, it seems outdated, but at the time it was pretty fascinating, eye-opening.
She went in as in-depth as she could. Mm-hmm. And also, the thing that was great about it was there were kind of little biographies about the pizza makers. So it shined a light on the pizza maker themselves as being a hero. And, at that time, it really had an impact on me because growing up in a pizza family, to me, pizza makers were heroes and was something to aspire to. But to the general public, being a pizza maker was like a dead-end job. It was like people would say, well, what are you going to do, be a pizza maker your whole life? As like a derogatory statement. And I was always thinking like, yeah, wouldn't that be great? What's wrong with being a pizza maker? It's a pretty cool thing to be. So the fact that this lady wrote a book that championed the pizza makers was revolutionary in its day.
Pizza Expo. What was your first, when did you first hear about that?
I first heard about Pizza Expo before they had the first Pizza Expo.
Was the first one in Las Vegas?
Yes.
Okay.
Jerry Darnell came out. He was the founder of Pizza Expo, had a very interesting backstory. He was actually a guy that had come from a different background, had somehow ended up with a little business that he wanted to add pizza to, and he found that there were no resources for information. And he said, well, this is a huge business. There are thousands of pizzerias in the country, and they don't have a trade show. They don't have a trade organization. So he was very perceptive. He's a terrible pizza maker, but that didn't matter because he was a great visionary. So he came out, and because the show was in Las Vegas, he got in touch with some Las Vegas pizza makers looking for advice or help or connections. We were like, there's going to be a pizza show in town. We got to get in on this. We got to, so we started volunteering in the early days. Like, we'll stuff envelopes, help you, pick you up at the airport, whatever you need to do. And we embraced it right away. The only people that didn't embrace it, for the most part, were the people in the Northeast part of the country. Midwest was well represented. The South, West Coast, the guys in New York, because they had been pizza makers for so long, they didn't really understand that there were advantages to trading ideas, to having educational programs, to having a resource where you could go to one place and see all of this equipment, all of the new food innovations. So that was Jerry's contribution. And then Pete LaChapelle, of course, came along, and Bill Oakley, and they turned it into something really special.
So you were at those first couple expos?
Yeah.
Do you remember what that was like?
Well, the first one was tiny. And then there were, but there were a couple of distributors that embraced the idea, and a couple of manufacturers, and it just started to grow. The educational programs at that time were mostly like motivational speakers and stuff like that. They weren't directly involved most of them were not directly involved in the pizza making process. And over the years, especially when Tony Gemignani and Pete reconfigured the educational programs, it really started to take off. And the competition, of course. We had a little bit to do with the early competitions because we used to do competitions in our restaurant for our employees to cross-train them. So they would compete. We called it the Pizza Olympics. And each of our employees would compete in the various job skills, including menu creation, all kinds of stuff. We had like 16-year-old kids developing recipes. And we told Jerry Darnell, who was the founder of Pizza Expo and the publisher of Pizza Today, that we did this, and he was intrigued by it and said, we should do something like this at Expo. We should have competitions where pizza makers can display their skills and be rewarded for their proficiency. So that basically came out of that. And then Tony, of course, got involved and took it to a completely different level.
At that point, when the expo started, John, how large was your pizzeria? Was this, I'm just trying to envision like what kind of operation it was. Was it a smaller, like 5-10 employee, or was this?
Maybe 15 employees.
Okay.
We had one shop at that time. We were just about to open our second location.
Was that something that you and your cousin like wanted? You wanted expansion? You wanted to open up more locations? Or was it we just wanted?
We wanted expansion because we thought that it was the only way we were going to keep good employees, was to give them opportunity. And, it's a mixed bag still to this day. But, I always tell people when they ask, how many stores do you have? I say, well, 7, but my goal is to have 1.
How about the first time you met Tony Gemignani? You mentioned him earlier.
Tony is, as you know, there's only one Tony. Sometimes you think there's many Tonys because he's doing so many different things at once. Tony, first and foremost, he started out as a competitor in terms of being, he wants to be the best. He's driven to be the best. And the thing that's fascinating about him is he's never satisfied. He works at it. You go to his pizzeria in North Beach, if he's there, he's covered in flour. He's running around like a maniac. This is the most successful pizza maker in the history of the country, and certainly one of the very top in the world. But he's still hungry. When he hears about something new, he wants to know about it. He wants to be able to do it. You hear him tell his story about discovering Neapolitan pizza in Naples for the first time. He was so intrigued that he immediately had to know how to do that because he knew that he didn't know it, and it bothered him. Tony sweats every detail. He sweats every skill level. He wants to be the best. He's driven, but in a positive way, and he's willing to take that knowledge and share it with people. I'm enormously grateful for everything Tony has done for me.
What has Tony done for you?
Introduced me to people all over the world, shared his knowledge, been a role model. We worked on the Guinness World Record together. We worked on developing the Caputo Americana flour together, and various projects. He's always invited me up to do seminars with him. I do seminars with Tony at Expo. I've probably done 7 or 8 of them. He didn't need me. Could have done that. He could have done those seminars without me, maybe better without me. But he gives me an opportunity to share my opinions, share my thoughts, give me exposure. He didn't have to do that. He did it because that's the kind of person he is.
Who else did the Expo world kind of bring you close to? I know you're very close with a lot of pizza makers from all over the country.
Giulio Adriani, Jonathan Goldsmith, Laura Meyer, Audrey Kelly, Derek Sanchez in Texas. I mean, there's hundreds. I don't want to leave anybody out.
Yeah. There's. It's crazy to think, and I've been doing a lot of these interviews, how close people are from the pizza community, and I just don't understand it, John, because no other, like, I don't know, I got Mexican chefs and different types of, like, there's not a community with anybody, like restaurateurs. And why do you think that is? Why are pizza makers so close? Why do they create these bonds and like lifelong friendships? How does that happen?
I think pizza by its nature is communal. The eating of pizza is communal. The sharing of pizza is communal. And it lends itself to, let's sit at a table together and talk.
Really?
It just seems to be that kind of, it's very different from every other part of the chef world, where there's a much more, there's competition in the pizza world as well, but it's not competition like I can only succeed if you don't succeed. It's, for some reason, it developed into something special, bonds that become like family.
It's incredible. It's beautiful. I mean, it's talking to one person and someone else gets mentioned, and then you get their perspective of that. But it's all like born, they meet at the expo, where there's people from everywhere.
Right.
Going,
Gino Rago, Lenny Rago, I met them at the expo. Mm-hmm. Tony Troiano, I met at expo. Fantastic guys. They're like brothers. They're amazing. And I know that if I have a question about something, I can call any of these people now all over the world and get an answer, get a generous answer. And they're very generous with their time. And I think we owe it to each other to pass that on.
Pizza champions, world pizza champions. When did you get introduced to this world? How much influence did you have on this organization? And
well, Tony founded the organization, of course. I was relatively late to the party. He invited me to be on at that time, when I joined the team, Tony was the entire nomination committee by himself. He handpicked the people that he wanted, that he felt were going to had the same values and were going to add to the group. So he was very careful about, he approached it as if it was like forming a baseball team. We need somebody that's good at this. We need somebody that's good at that. We need to have a complete team. And people sometimes misunderstand, because originally the team was based on people that were competitors for the most part. Were involved in the competitive cooking process. To me, the team has expanded to mean something different. World Pizza Champions to me means being a champion of pizza. Not a champion like getting a first place award, but being a fantastic ambassador, representative, protector, a sword and shield, spreading the word and protecting as well. And, the main criteria is not just, are you a pizza maker, but are you a champion person? Now, do you have that spirit of generosity and the discipline to be a good ambassador for our craft? Mm-hmm. To put the craft, we're not here to just serve pizza. We're here to serve pizza, to do something good for pizza, to bring it to another level for the next generation. And hopefully they can do the same. Now, if you think of life as a relay race, somebody hands you the baton, you don't run in place. You run forward, right? Mm-hmm. You run forward and then you hand it to somebody else. And I think that's what we have to do as pizza makers.
I've seen you for years at Pizza Expo, and so many people come up to you, ask you questions. You're so giving. With what you write and the videos. Just watching one right before you jumped on too. It was at the Mara Forney booth. Were you always so just giving and willing to teach? And were you always like this? Or is this something that developed over time?
I have 38 first cousins, so we always shared everything. We all lived basically in the same town for the most part, went to the same schools. I guess from childhood, I was predisposed to the idea that life is more fun when you do it with other people. And hopefully the people that I've met and maybe had some influence on, if I have had any influence at all, will have the same spirit.
I'm sorry, I turned my head because there's another commonality. The more influential the person that I've spoken to, the more humble and they are about it. Like there's nobody, I don't think, you're definitely in the top 3 or 4 people that I could even think of that has had the most influence of any generation of pizza makers. So I hope you're aware of that, John, because you've definitely
I
had
appreciate
so much.
that. I have no illusions that I'm going to be remembered for anything, but that's okay. My goal is not that people remember me. My goal is people remember the message, which is to approach pizza with an open heart and help each other. Now, Giulio Adriani, who is one of my dearest friends, always says pizza is happiness. For some people, it turns out to not be happiness, but that's because of them. If you share, if you're generous, if you're sincere, if you see pizza as being larger than yourself, none of us, and I know quite a few well-known, highly regarded pizza makers, none of us are bigger than pizza itself.
Truly Pizza, let's talk about. So, what I haven't been yet, but I see stuff, I listen to people, I hear about it. That was a lot of work and thought that went into creating that. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I told you that I opened up my first pizzeria in Las Vegas in 1980. June 1st, 1980, it was a Sunday. On Monday, a girl walked into our pizzeria with her brother. We got to talking to her. She was in high school. Became a friend. Her family became friends. She's my partner at Truly. She's my investor. 46 years later, and she just gave us an amazing opportunity to do something really special. She called me up after she had retired from a very successful career in the hospitality industry, and she called me up and said, "Let's build a really great pizzeria. What do you need?" No holds barred. She's like a unicorn investor. And her name is Donna Baldwin. She's amazing. She's given us amazing support and amazing resources to do something really special. And naturally, you know that Chris Decker has been with me for 30 years. Phenomenal talent. He had talent to do things that were different from just Metro Pizza, which is basically a family pizzeria. Blown up family pizzeria. But he had the vision that extended beyond that. He wanted to do something else, and he had the talent. And Donna gave us the ability to do that at a very high level. And if she ever hears this, I'll tell you straight up, she can be a real pain, but in a good way, because she wants it to be great. She's got exacting standards, and she believes in us. That's given us tremendous opportunity and tremendous stage to do all the things. I think every restaurant is kind of a time capsule of when it was created, the era that it was created in. It's very hard for any restaurant to exist for multiple generations and not evolve. And Truly, we named it Truly because it's a true expression of who we are as pizza makers right now. What we've learned over the course of Mike Jackie has been in the business a long time. Chris has been in the business a long time. I've been around. I'm a dinosaur. And it's really the embodiment of everything that we've learned, all the experiences that we've had, all the travel, all the knowledge that we've acquired, put into something that's very much in this moment. The trick is, how do you sustain that? How do you, we've had a lot of accolades. We've had a lot of success. And we just opened in Laguna 2 weeks ago. It's crushing. But
Congratulations.
How do you keep that fire alive? How do you keep it fresh? How do you keep, when you've had success, how do you keep that spirit of, we got to keep going into the lab. We got to keep making it better. And we did that very intentionally from day one. When Michael Vacnine and Chris and I got together in the lab and said, we're going to do something really special that is our vision of where we think pizza should be headed today, the first thing we said is, no matter how good it is, no matter how much praise we get, we got to never be satisfied, which goes back to my dad. Never say it's good enough. Let's leave it alone. Let's never leave it alone. I fully expect that if you went to Truly today and you go back a year from now, no matter how great it was today, if I'm not better next year, I failed. If I'm not better tomorrow, I failed.
That's just incredible. How does that menu get developed? How do you sustain that? Do you guys talk weekly, daily, quarterly? How does this work behind the scenes?
Hourly.
Oh,
We talk hourly. I was on the phone with Michael right before we got on this call. And I was on the phone with Chris this morning, and I'll talk to him probably 5 more times tonight. You don't log hours, you don't log days. If you love the work, you just do the work. And I'm not going to say, that old saw about love what you do and you'll never work a day in your life. If you're in the restaurant business and you're successful, you're working. But work is not a curse. There's something important about work.
Chris, you said 30 years you've known now, correct?
Yep. Chris came to work for me when he was in college at UNLV. He's from upstate New York. He came in for a job as a busser, but he told me that he had made some pizza. He had made pizza a little bit in New York. He had a little bit of experience, and I said, "Well, you're not going to be a busser. You're going to be a pizza maker." And he worked in between me and my dad for decades, and emerged. He emerged as a force on his own. I can't, people say like Chris is my protege. I don't think of it that way. I think Chris is an amazing colleague. Chris is like my son, and there has to be a time when your son becomes independent of you, and you have to know when to let go and when to just give them opportunity and build a good foundation, and then say, okay, you need to make choices for yourself now. And to see him succeed like that, truly, and see the acceptance that we've received, and the acknowledgement around the world, it's the best feeling.
Parkinson, John, and you do some great work with your foundation. We're going to get to that. When did you learn of this? Was there early symptoms of it? When is this?
I was diagnosed. It's going on 12 years now, but I had symptoms several years before that. It's very common when people have Parkinson's to attribute the effects to something else, kind of be in denial. It's scary for a lot of people.
What are some
I'm
of the
lucky.
early?
I don't have time to be scared. I'm in the restaurant business. I got to go to work.
God bless, and you're not stopping, obviously. So you said there's some early symptoms as well, John. Is there, just what are some of those early symptoms? Is there something that people should be aware of? I don't know.
The most common symptom that people don't realize, naturally tremor is the most visible. So people think, if they see tremor, they start thinking about the possibility of having neurological damage. The most common symptom that appears first is diminished sense of smell, which if you're in the restaurant business, if you're a cook, becomes pretty obvious pretty quickly. So that was the first symptom that I had that I kind of ignored for several years.
Okay. And then, wow, I didn't know that. So sense of smell is one of the first early indications. Okay.
And then broken sleep patterns, tremor, of course, loss of balance. There are a whole laundry list of symptoms. They get to be pretty scary for people. But I would like to tell people that you're not going to get all of them, and you're not going to get them immediately. So if you do get diagnosed, there's still plenty of things that you can do. You may do them differently. You may not do them as proficiently as you once did, but life is degenerative too. Time passes by. At 58 years being a pizza maker, I was going to slow down anyway.
Tell me a little bit about the foundation, some of the work you're doing now.
Well,
How it came about.
John Arena Foundation. Yeah, the John Arena Foundation, another one of Tony's ideas, because the World Pizza Champions gets involved in a lot of charity work, and after I was diagnosed, Tony said, "Well, why don't we do something with John? We're always doing things for various charities, but we have a team member who's been a part of the team for quite a while that has a cause himself. Let's support that." So when I was diagnosed, I was told by my neurologist there are 1.3 million people in the United States that have Parkinson's disease. And the first thing I said was, "Well, where are they? I don't know anybody that has Parkinson's disease." And he said, "That's because many of them don't go out. They don't socialize. They're not active. they're self-conscious, and that self-consciousness and that seclusion um, accelerates the degenerative nature of the disease. And I just thought, well, I know how we can get them out. Let's teach people to make pizza. So the foundation is primarily we raise money for research, but primarily what we do is we create activities, cooking activities for Parkinson's patients, so that they can go out, socialize, feel like they're still contributing to their family, and learning a new skill, which builds new neurological pathways, and has been proven to slow down. Building new neurological pathways by learning new skills has been proven to slow down the progression of the disease. Parkinson's is uncurable and it's degenerative, but it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to kill you. It's not life threatening unless you stop functioning. Lose the will to go on. And I think you have to be able to let go of what you think you were in the past and embrace what you can do right now. So my goal was to provide Parkinson's patients with with an activity that would be rewarding right now. We're not looking for a cure. There are plenty of other foundations that do that. I ask myself, what can I do to make people have a better life right now? And we did that through pizza.
Yes, sir. Um, that's incredible. Tell me about how have these events been going?
They're
How
great,
have
and I have one coming up in Houston next Monday with Nicole Beans, an amazing pizza maker and teammate. Anna Crusid has been really the guiding light of the foundation from Pittsburgh, and we have some fun with Parkinson's patients, and they are able to make a pizza that they take home to cook for their family, and I think it gives the patients a sense of gratification and purpose, and that's really what it's all about. You know, as pizza makers, as you know, Pasquale, pizza is a food born of poverty. So if you grew up as a pizza maker, you basically took things that maybe were not that desirable or less than perfect, and you turned them into something good. So for me, the John Arena Foundation is an extension of that. I took something that was nobody wants to have Parkinson's disease. Nobody thinks it's a great idea. But if I can take my experience as a Parkinson's patient and turn it into something good for somebody else, I've kind of captured the spirit of pizza.
everything you say, John, is just deep and on point and meaningful. And you again, I just blown away by your selflessness from all the years I've seen you from afar to having some conversations to this chapter in your life now where you're doing. You're just an incredible human being, and yeah, thank you so much for everything that you do. And I'm sure
Right.
these events are incredible. I'd love to come and see one day. Are you doing these all over the country now, John?
Yeah, I did one in Chicago. I've done some in New York,
Okay,
California, now Houston. I think the next one's going to be in Colorado. We'll definitely do Chicago again, so you can come to that.
absolutely. Yeah.
Had a great. We follow it up with a fundraising dinner. This year we had Derek Tung,
Tongue, yeah.
the Rago brothers, Tony Troiano. Um, of course, we had it at Spaccanapoli with my dear friend Jonathan Goldsmith. So great stuff.
Great stuff. And how does somebody, if somebody wants to help with the organization or get involved, is there anything that anyone could do, or is this something like you're slowly rolling
Yeah,
it
they
out?
can,
These events, I know
go
it's
go to John Arena Foundation on Instagram. You can get all the information from there.
okay. Give us some other advice that you want to give this younger generation. The guys in their early 20s, like when you started out with your own place. What are some lessons that you learned in retrospect? Some things that you wish you had done that you recommend they do.
First of all, pizza making is physical, so you have to be in condition. When I have people that come to me that say they want to be in the pizza business, the first thing I do is have them follow me around for a couple of days. Many of them don't make it past day two. but they don't realize just how challenging it is. So the best advice that I can give to anybody who's contemplating a career in pizza is to work in a pizzeria. There are so many people, especially with the COVID era pizza makers that started out doing pop-ups out of their, lowering pizzas from their apartment window onto the sidewalk. That's not the same as being in a pizzeria day after day, year after year. So you have to not only accept the routine, but you have to fall in love with the routine and fall in love with the rhythms, the changes of season, the changes in the nature of the business over decades. You have to really embrace that and realize that you control as many things as you can, but you can never control everything. So, Laura Meyer always says, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I think that's the best advice you can give to anyone that's going to be in the restaurant business.
And you seem like someone, John, 71, um, still going strong, waking up at 6 a.m., talking pizza, talking shop with your friends, developing truly, being so involved in that. You're so selfless, so giving. What's the secret to that? How do what's the advice of that? Looking back on your life and being so selfless, how can you how did you do that? How did you?
I just always, maybe because of my astounding lack of talent, I always needed to rely on other people. So I recognized that, and I became comfortable with that. I realized very early on, I mean, when I got started in the pizza business, I told you I worked with my cousin. I actually started working for my family before my cousin did. And then I couldn't keep up. I was washing dishes or something at that time. And I brought my cousin in to help me with the work. And my Uncle Rocco said, "What's he doing here?" And I said, "Well, I can't keep up." So I brought him in to help. He said, "Okay." At the end of the week, he split our pay. What I used to make, I now made half, and my cousin got the other half. And my uncle said, "Well, I didn't hire him, you did." And from that point, I think, that kind of set the stage for we can get more done together than we can by ourselves.
Another great quote. Thank you, John. John, I want to thank you so much, bottom of my heart. This has been incredible. Again, I know how busy you are and everything else. Again, not shocked. You're so giving. You're so selfless. Just thank you so much.
No, I appreciate the opportunity. I mean, there's a big world out there. There's a lot of people you could talk to that have a lot more experience than I do and have a lot more to talk about. So I appreciate you calling me and giving me a chance to talk about the foundation and my colleagues. Really, it's more about them. The people that I work with are just amazing, and they've allowed me to have the opportunity to keep going.
And I just hope it came through earlier in the conversation about the pizza man being the hero and someone you wanted to aspire to be to. Well, I hope you know that you're a hero to so many, and we all aspire to be half the person you are one day. So thank you.
Well, hopefully in the future they can choose better.
John, thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
Okay. Thanks, Pasquale.